So today we are talking about mission and about having a mission-driven company. So that subject is very important for the family because every company in our portfolio is at some point mission-driven. It's not mandatory, like, it's not if you want to build a company, it can be because you are willing to make a lot of money, it's fine. Like, especially in France, we should say that more. It's fine to make money, you should be able to do it. But that doesn't mean that making money is the only reason of doing a startup. So having a mission is, in our view, something very, very important. And very important in the sense that this is what build great companies. Because having a clear mission helps you to do 3 things that regular companies are not able to do. The first thing is that it lets you attract the best talent. Because think about it, it's very easy. At equal salaries, people will be attracted by the best company and the best mission. Because if you can do 10,000 a month working for someone without any soul, or making 10,000 a month working for someone that wants to change the world, there is a lot of chance that best talent will choose changing the world over just get a boring job. So that's something we always forget when we build a company, is that we are trying, entrepreneurs love to think about business model, sustainability, strategy, blah, blah, blah. But they forget that at the end of the day, the most important thing is to attract talent. Because if you have no one to build a company with you, like, you will be alone in the dark and you will soon end up not able to build anything. So attracting talent is so important that being mission-driven is one of the most important things you can be. The second thing is that being mission-driven helps a lot to manage every down inside the startup history. Because you will have a lot and a lot of down. There will be a lot of moments in your history where you will not feel right, where things are not working like they are supposed to work. There will be a lot of moments where it will be so difficult. Then having a strong mission is the only way to survive. Works a little bit like faith or science or whatever belief you have. If you deeply believe in something, if you have really something in your heart, it will work much better than having something in your brain. Because, your brain is a little bit complicated because rational argument can change, data point can change, but faith is very strong. So if you have faith in what you are doing and faith in your startup, it's much easier. And the last reason for what mission-driven is so important is because it helps to take quick decisions. When you have a clear mission, you don't hesitate a lot. When you have a clear mission, most of the time the strategy is obvious. When you have a clear mission, a lot of things that usually are execution debate, become things that are so obvious that no one will talk about. And that's what is important. And that will be my transition to introduce you to the way to build the mission. Like, having a mission is not something you decide, it's something you build. And it's something you build over time. Don't ever think that, a lot of great companies with great mission did not realize that they have this mission on day one. Like, don't put that pressure on you to believe that on day one you need to have a mission like Google or Facebook, because all of that come also thanks to the success. Your success builds confidence. Confidence builds more ambitious mission. More ambitious mission builds more success. And more success builds more confidence. And that very nice circle is what you are trying to achieve. So the first thing to understand about mission is that the mission is incarnate in the culture of the company. Mission equals culture. Because the culture of your company is just an expression and a reflection of the mission you are trying to build. Let's say your mission, I love the Facebook one. The Facebook one is to make the world more connected and open. It's kind of very clear. Everybody see what they mean with that. It's one of the most easy one to understand in our technological world. So let's say you have this mission. You see very clearly that you need a culture of openness. Like let's imagine that Zuckerberg was, not willing to share anything of his personal life online. And let's say he doesn't want to post anything on Facebook, but he wants to make the world more open and connected. You see the trouble. So it's very caricatural, but it's just to make you understand that the culture inside your company reflects the mission. And so everyone at Facebook should be open and willing to have a Facebook profile, because being the first user of Facebook is what is building Facebook. So you have to take your culture very seriously. And the problem is that taking culture seriously is really hard, because there is a lot of confusion about what culture means. A lot of people have a misconception about what is the culture inside the company. And I will offer you a very personal definition. The culture is not what you say. The culture is not what you write. The culture is not everything you express. The culture reflects in who you are hiring, who you are promoting, and who you are paying. Like, that's the real culture. For example, I will not tell a name. On Sunday, I met a very famous CEO that told me that in their culture, equality between men and women was very important. And it's something they are working very hard to promote. And he told me that he was the biggest sponsor of Women.20, I don't know which crap or something event. And I told him, so what is the salary difference between men and women inside your company? He said, I don't know. I said, yes, so you are not serious about that. Point. Like, you cannot come and say, my goal is to be very serious about culture. And I want that every woman feel equal to a man inside my company and do what everybody do in every company, pay women less than men. You can do a very nice poster, you can do a great event, you can bring journalists, but at the end of the day it will be crap because it's not real. And the most real thing about a company is how do you pay your people. There is not such a thing more serious than how you pay people inside your company. Who do you promote? Who is in charge? That reflects culture of a company much more than anywhere else. And that's what builds a strong culture internally. A strong culture comes when there is a perfect alignment between what you say, what you think, and what you do. And that's what is so difficult for a lot of companies, because they will say something because it looks good publicly. They will think another thing because they have their own opinion. And at the end of the day, they will do something completely different. And culture doesn't necessarily look good, by the way. For example, let's take a company that everybody loves to hate, Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs is a very easy company to hate because their culture is based on a very simple thing, up or out. Like, you want to summarize the culture at Goldman Sachs? You perform, you make a lot of money. You don't perform, you get fired. And every year they fire the less 10% people in terms of performance. They reward the top 25, and everybody else wait for another year to see if they get in the bottom 10 or in the up 25. Because if every year the bottom 10 get fired, if you don't go up, you get down. So what I love about this company is one of my favorite companies on earth, because they are openly evil. Like, they don't have any trouble with that. And I mean, we are in a society where a private company is allowed to fire people and pay people a lot of money and things like that. Because thanks God, they are not deciding which society we are. They are just deciding how they act as a private company. And I find them very rational in their culture. That's why I was so disappointed when I learned recently that they decided to open I was like, oh my God, this is crap. Like, they will start to die. Because you cannot go against your culture. You cannot go, like, if for 60 years you build a culture of performance and killing each other and over-performing, you cannot go and say, oh, let's collaborate. Because collaboration is something that is so cultural that it should be in your DNA. So to understand the culture inside your company, you have to understand that culture is the DNA of your company. And when the DNA is defined, it's really hard to change it, and it's really hard to express it in any other way. And that means that the culture is not so much something that you decide to build, it's much more something that you will express by letting yourself be what you are. And you know, the very difficult thing about culture is that it will be the single point of winning or losing inside your company, because a very badly defined culture will never reject anyone. So let's talk about that. A good culture is a culture that rejects as much as it adopts. If your culture doesn't make uncomfortable a lot of people, it's not a real culture. And by the way, if you decide in your culture to express value, please don't express bullshit value. You know what's a bullshit value? It's a value that no one can be against. For example, there is a lot of companies that say, our culture is to be innovative. Oh, really? Like, you really think someone in the world will be like, our culture is to be uninnovative? We are so proud to be jet lag. Like, no one will do that. So it's not a real value. If you say, oh, our first value is honesty. Really? Honesty? Because, yeah, of course, someone can come and say, our first value is to be unhonest. So that's bullshit value. Real value are value that you can reverse, and when you reverse them, they are still strong value. For example, Netflix. You can read Netflix culture slide on slide deck, one of the best documents ever written about culture inside company. You can take every single slide and you can reverse it. Every single value that Netflix express can be the opposite and still fine as a value. Let's take again the example of Facebook. Facebook openness can be something you reverse. Look, Snapchat. Snapchat is a nemesis of Facebook, because where Facebook try to make you remember everything you post forever, Snapchat is trying to delete everything you post, because they know that most of the things you post you are ashamed of, especially when you are a teenager. So you see that both values can coexist in the world, and people can adopt one value or adopt another, fight for one and fight for the other, and it will still be fine. And that's our real value. Value that express something that is a choice. A choice that will make your company win on the end, and a choice that also will create a kind of an homogenic group of people. Because why strong culture helps to win? It's because it makes a lot of things obvious. For example, there is a story I always love to tell privately. I never tell it publicly. And I'm sorry, Jean, to tell it publicly. But there is someone that worked with us a long time. It's Jean de la Roche-Brochard. He's now the head of Kima. And I will always remember the first week of Jean at the family, because he said, I have a principle, is that I never upset anyone. And when you know Jean now and what he's publishing, like, it's really funny to imagine that he really believed that one day. And why? Because at the family, you cannot stay like that for a long time. Because we are so radical that we don't care what people think. Because that's our culture. Our main value is radicality. And by the way, you can reverse it. It's very fine to don't be radical. Like, radicality is not the only value. Like, if everyone was radical as a family, our life would be a nightmare. But what happened is that when you are inside the family, you learn that kind of radicality, and it changes yourself, and it helps you to express that feeling that you have inside you. And if you don't have this feeling of value inside you, you just change your job. And that's fine. I mean, a lot of people resign from the family or left the family or get fired from the family because they never get that. You know, another example is Miguel that works with us. Miguel told us last week that he started to like the fact that he doesn't have an office. And I was very proud of that because that's a cultural win. Because when you're 50 years old and you spend 30 years old of your life with an office, like coming to a place where no one is allowed to have a personal office and a personal desk, it can be something that is a struggle. And you know, it's a little bit of a fight. But at some point when you learn it and when you start to love it is when there is a cultural win. And that cultural win comes from the fact that it was a process over time. So the culture, you can see that as something that will shape people in a direction where every decision that people take will be aligned with the DNA of the company, because the DNA of the company expressed well. And that starts on day one. Like, your mission can grow in ambition over time. That's fine. But your culture should be clear and strong on day one. You have no other choice. You have no other choice than being crystal clear about who you are, how do you want to work, which kind of value are you expressing, and how do you want to do that? And so, again, and I will never repeat that enough, don't recruit for competence. Like at Equal Competence, culture will be the thing that will distinguish a good employee from a bad one. Because it's contextual. Someone who is good in your culture will be bad somewhere else, and someone that is bad for you will be good somewhere else. And people don't think enough about this kind of context because companies in Europe are not so good at expressing the culture they want to adopt and the kind of thing they want to achieve. And that's why you need so much to think about your culture and to build culture. So one of the ways to build culture at the beginning is to be with people that look like you. I know we love to talk about diversity, blah, 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 but real diversity doesn't really work. So please understand me well. I'm not talking about racial diversity or thermal diversity or equality of gender, blah, blah. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that people love to build things with people that have exactly the same culture. And that can be very diverse in the traditional way of thinking. You can have a very diverse company for someone that look like you with very traditional criteria, like where people are coming from or who they are. But actually, it will be very strong and homogenetic internally because they share a culture that is invisible for the outside. So, two things that always create a trouble of culture: gap of age between founders. There is that data point that we love, is that when there is a more than 4 years gap of age inside the founders, it always works bad because it's really hard to have the same culture than someone that is not from your generation. And by the way, it's harder and harder. Like, just a little digression. Like, anyone here use Snapchat? Please raise your hand. Raise your hand. Who is using Snapchat more than 10 times a day? Okay, you see we are all fucking old. So, do you know a US teenager, how many times he uses Snapchat a day? It's between 150 to 250 in average. Like some teenagers are using Snapchat more than 300 times a day. They are doing 8 billion views a day with 100 million users. 8 billion views a day is what YouTube is doing with 1 billion active users. So you imagine the level of engagement? And I love that example because it's the first time in my life I feel old, and it's the first time in my life I feel jet lag. Like each time I install Snapchat, I'm like, my God, what's that? Like the app is crappy, you don't get how it works. Like no one is able to explain. And you know, when you have old friends, it's so boring because you send bad Snapchat and we reply with worse Snapchat. And you're like, oh my God, like I look like my parents. Generation gap are something real. And when you see things like that, you understand why it's so hard to do a company with generation gap. And that's why most of the time founders share something like the edge. And of course, it's not about edge, it's about mindset. And of course, there's people that are ever young, and I was hoping to be in that case, and I'm losing something. Another one, like, who bought Bitcoin here? Yeah? 1, 2. Yeah, that's another generation gap. Like people that get Bitcoin and the people that don't get Bitcoin. I bought Bitcoin. I'm not sure I'm getting Bitcoin. I was talking with one of our entrepreneurs about Bitcoin, and he told me you should stop to talk about it because you seem to understand, but there is not word at the right place. I was like, what? So yeah, you talk weird. I was like, what? So yeah, you know what? You don't get it. Forget it. I was okay. I will do something else. Something important to get back to our subject. Culture is not about perks. Like I'm so tired, like of hearing entrepreneurs that confuse, you know, like the simple symbol of culture and the reality of culture. Like the very good example of that is the CEO of Airbus. I will have trouble with that, but he went to Silicon Valley, he visited Google, and he saw that some people have Bermuda. So he came back at Airbus and said, on Friday will be mandatory Bermuda at Airbus. And you're like, oh my God. Like, how can you confuse so much a symbol with a real action of management? Like, thanks God, no one was drinking 1 liter of tequila there. Like, everyone will be drunk at Airbus and we will have problem with our plane. Like, because the problem with people that see the world like that is that they think that Google is innovating because some people are in Bermuda. But Google is innovative because no one ever noticed that anyone was in Bermuda. It's the other way around. And that's the reality of culture. And by the way, that shows a lot about Airbus culture. It shows that for them, they are visiting fucking Google, and the only thing they talk about is Bermuda. So you see the level, like, that's the kind of people that are very easy to shock. That's the kind of people that are very easy to surprise. And it shows that they have a very rigid culture. So they can wear Bermuda, it will still be rigid because it will not be from art. So, you know, like there is more and more company that have cats in their office, or more and more companies that have dogs in their office, or they have a baby foot or a ping pong table, or I don't know what, and they say, look, we have such a strong culture. So you see, we have a cat here. That's not part of our culture. That's just a consequence because we are a family, and a good family have a nice cat. And the name of the cat is a lion. Think about that. Like, think about how we see the world and how we see ourselves. It shows much more about our culture than the fact that we have a cat. The fact that we have a cat doesn't really matter. So, by the way, is it an asset or liability? We have this finance question. So, perks are just a nice to have that doesn't represent your culture. Your culture is much more deep and important than that. Your culture represents, it will be exactly the same thing that saying that what represents a person is the thing that they say in public. You know, people usually in public never say 100% of what they think. Culture and perks is exactly the same thing. Perks is just the public representation of the culture, and it's just so the kind of money that the company have. Because, let's be honest, more you have money, more you can spend in perks. And it's so easier to spend in perks than in salary. So by the way, look at Netflix slide again. What they say, we don't care about perks, we just increase salary. You see, that's a strong cultural stance. They say, you don't come to the office to have fun, you come to work. So we increase your salary and you can buy perk outside of work. That's a strong culture. It's much stronger than all these people that tell me that they put a dog in the office so they are friendly. Let's take some very famous example of culture. The first one is Google Don't Be Evil. Is one of my favorite one because it's something you can really, like if you want to criticize Google, or if you are a huge fanboy of Google, you can use exactly the same sentence to tear them down or to cheer them up. Because let's say you are a fanboy. If you are a fanboy of Google, and there is few of them, they really believe in that sentence. They really believe that don't be evil is something really important at Google, and it's something that really directs the kind of action. And for example, I will show you how it can be very actionable to have a culture. When Google decided to leave China, it's because this sentence, not business reason. Like if you look from an MBA perspective or a business case perspective, leaving China has been the worst decision that Google ever took, ever. Like in terms of revenue, in terms of power, in terms of strategic positioning, leaving China was so bad. And by the way, if they had so much trouble inside the top management, it's because some people wanted to apply that sentence at heart inside Google, and especially Sergey Brin. And some people was like, hey, guys, okay, we write that sentence, it's cool for PR, but we are talking about fucking business here. So don't mess up and don't leave China. And it's so funny because everybody that said that get fired. Every single top executive that tried to don't leave China at Google because they say that is just a marketing stance got fired. So you see, it's very interesting because that sentence doesn't mean anything. Like, don't be evil. Like, good luck to define evil. Good luck, like, is it evil to get all data about everyone? Is it evil to be kind of a big brother? It's a debate. And that's why it's such a value, because you have so much debate. It can be used for worse, like it can be used for very good thing. And you know what? A good culture motto create debate inside your company about the future and makes the present very obvious. That's the best motto, because if you look at the view of Google at present, they will be like, we are doing good, and that motto will help them to discuss the future and where they want to go as a company. So it's really interesting. My next favorite one is a very famous one. Like I took very famous example because they really represent how it can be incredible to build a story and culture. Is the Amazon door story. So if you work at Amazon, every desk is a door. You know, it's a door that we put on the desk, and we build desk with door. And when people come and they are like, what the fuck, why I'm working on the door? They will tell you the story that Jeff Bezos at the beginning of Amazon discovered that it was cheaper to buy a door and put it as a desk than buying a real desk. And it was so easy to buy second-hand door in brokerage. What does it show? It shows that in retail, every penny counts. If you are a retailer, your margins are so thin and your clients are so important that every penny counts. Like, you can write on the wall, every penny counts, and you can fly in private jet and buy very nice and expensive office. And everybody will be like, yeah, every penny counts, but some less than the others. But when you make people work on door, and you as a boss is working on door, and everyone doesn't have a real desk, people are forced to discuss about it every time they see that. Every time there is a new employee, you have the discussion. And that's an incredible culture trigger. If you can find something like that, it makes culture so actionable because it forces everyone to, because, you know, let's say you have 10 new employees that arrive at Amazon and they see the door. Like their reaction, like let's say employees are like, yeah, we are working on door because the boss is crazy. It will not be a very good thing because people will be like, really, he's crazy? Yeah, I prefer to work on door. It open mind. You know, like it's a door open your mind. Yeah, no. Sometimes I feel so alone on stage. So, if you have a real reason, if you have something that explains why you are working on door, it's something you remember all your life. Like everyone, the first time I visited Amazon office, I was like, what the fuck? Like, why they are working on door? And someone told me the story, and I think I told that story to more than 10,000 people, thanks to YouTube. So it's very interesting to see like how a culture can be something actionable. Another one is Andreessen Horowitz 10-minute late, $10 a minute late fee. So every VC in the world are late. It's a structural thing in the VC business. And by the way, there is very good reason for that. One of the reasons is that you always have emergency. You will always have a last-minute deal or last-minute conversation or something important you have to do. And because you feel that some deals are more important than others, you play with time. And so some people will see you very late. And being late means that you don't respect the entrepreneur. One of the trouble with that is that a lot of entrepreneurs took being late from VC as a sign that they don't respect them and they don't take care of the entrepreneurs. Because if someone shows up with 1 hour late, it means that he's much more important than you. Because it means that your time is less precious than his time. So Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz, when they created Andreessen Horowitz, they wanted that every employee treat everyone inside Andreessen Horowitz as people as entrepreneurs with a lot of respect. But you can tell a junior associate that you should respect entrepreneurs. And it will be like, yeah, sure, of course, why I will not respect them? Or you can do something that say, every minute you are late, you have to pay a $10 fee by minute. 60 minutes late for a meeting, $600. Like the biggest tip paid was by Mark Andreessen for $2,400. $2,400. You imagine coming to a meeting and putting $2,400 in a pot and saying, I'm sorry, that's my fee for being late. And so why it's an incredible culture trigger? First, because every time they are late, they pay in front of the entrepreneurs a fee. They put it in a box in the middle of the room, and they have to explain why they are doing that. Because you imagine you have someone is 15 minutes late, and it's like, oh, fuck, $150. You know, so it helps create the conversation. Also, like, even if they are all billionaires, like, you don't always have cash on you, and it's a struggle, and it's not fine to pay. So it forces a lot of people to arrive on time. But when they don't arrive on time, each time they don't arrive on time, they have to remember that at Andreessen Horowitz, we take care of entrepreneurs. And that is small thing. But, yeah. So they give that to a charity every year. So they collect all the money and give to a charity. I don't know how much in total they give, but I'm sure it's a lot because even them, they are late because it's clearly impossible to never be late in that business. But at least, everybody, like, by the way, I think everybody loves that when they are late because it's funny. And it creates a very good vibe. Another one that I love, so I think Facebook changed it, I'm not sure, but move fast and break things. I love that one because, you know, usually people, when they express value, they express things that are really beautiful. And move fast. Everybody wants to move fast. But what I love with that is that the consequence of moving fast is breaking things. Because what happens when you move fast? When you move fast, you make mistakes. When you move fast, you break things, and things will not work out as planned. Because that's what happens when you move fast. It's impossible to move fast and everything is doing well. And you see how something negative becomes something that they cheer up and they adopt and they express as something that is fine. So sometimes expressing your culture is about accepting that things will not work perfectly and that you are fine with some of them because they just express who you are and how you work. So one of the mistakes with every weak company, one of the questions I hate most from entrepreneurs is what is a good cultural thing to copy and implement? Like every entrepreneur that tells me that drive me crazy. Like I'll always feel hurt when that happens. Because it means that they don't get that it was about expressing something very contextual and very intimate. By the way, it will look like if someone come to you on first meeting and ask you like, what is the sex practice we should implement in the next week? Like no one is doing that. Because that's a very private conversation. Your culture is a very private conversation as well. Doesn't mean that you cannot exchange or express, but if you try to copy the culture of others without sharing their goal, you will end up hurting your company. Because you will do things that will go against the interest of your company. The second thing is that every good culture has an enemy. Like it's impossible to don't have a culture and don't have something to fight for. Every startup has something they fight against. There is no startup on earth that makes everyone unanimously happy. So you have to be very clear about who is your enemy and what you fight for, and that will create a sentiment of unity. And that's a very old-fashioned political trick, by the way. Each time you have internal problem in politics, just create a war. It works every time. Because people focus on the war. Same thing in your company. You don't want that people spend too much time in internal politics? Create a war. Create a sentiment that the enemy is outside, not internally. Everybody will be fine with that. Because they will be in a movement where the only goal is to kill something. Like one of the companies that was so good at that was Cisco. Because Cisco was electing every year in the annual meeting the company to kill. So employee can vote for one competitor every year. And the one that was chosen, sales at Cisco have every right to kill him, even selling at debt. And at loss. And they killed so many companies on market because you imagine every year they have 25,000 people in a room yelling your name because they want to kill you. That creates something very tribal. And people are focused for 1 year on something very simple. It's not about winning because we are already leader and it's hard to stay a leader, but it's about like that one will not survive. And if that one doesn't survive, we will be better because we will take more market share, blah, blah, blah. So that's a very monopoly play. It works. Like you don't underestimate how much it works to have a very strong enemy and how much you unite your team internally. There is not a better culture than another one. Like you cannot compare culture from a company to another. There is not a culture at Google is very PhD. Culture at Facebook is very hacker. Culture at the family is very warrior. Culture at I don't know where is blah blah blah. Like it's a culture is a choice, and it's a choice that is never good or bad. What is bad is when you make no choice. Like for example. There is a company I love because I was invited at the conference, and the CEO of the company said that they will adopt a more collaborative culture. You know, that's the new trend. Like, everyone wants to be collaborative. And 5 minutes later, he explained how the long-term incentive plan will be implemented in the company. So he explained that now, instead of having collective bonus, they will have individual bonus. And I was like, that guy is dumb. Like, he don't even realize. So I went on stage and I say, you know, if you want to have a collaborative culture, you should have a unique P&L, and you should have collective bonus. Because what does it mean to be collaborative where you are in a company where what you kill is what you eat? You know, that's not the definition of collaborative. And it's so funny because after 1 hour of conference, the guy came and said, I didn't get what you mean. Like, I don't see the point and the link between how we pay people and what we want to be. And we are talking about a guy that is managing 25,000 people. So it's very usual. Why? Because it's not that he's stupid. That's not the fact, actually. The point is that that guy is only obsessed about what he wants to believe. And someone, an advisor, told him, you know, it's very good to say that you are collaborative. And then other advisors say, if we want that people work harder, we need to make their life more difficult in terms of salary. So because that guy sees himself as a big communicator, he did a very nice pitch. And he's saying both messages. Why? Because he takes two different advice that goes in two opposite directions, and he doesn't see where is the trouble. That's so common in corporate world. Like, that's why corporate world is struggling so much. As a startup, you don't have the luxury of doing that because you don't have automatic yearly revenue. You don't have the inertia of making a lot of money. So you cannot do this kind of crap. So values are in details. Values are not in big things. Like, again, you can say how much your value is important for you. It will be always in a small detail that you will notice if the value is true or not. You know, like, I will tell you one of the most common story about racism in France. So, you know, you have a lot of left people that, because they are on the left politically, they think that it's really important to don't be racist. It's so usual in France, you know. Like, if you look about how people feel comfortable with racism, more they are on left, less they feel comfortable with racism. More they are on right, less they feel comfortable about expressing difference about that subject. And one day their daughter will bring a black man at home. And they will be uncomfortable with that. And that day the real culture happened. Because it's in this kind of details or life event that you see if people are really racist or not. And it's as human as that. Because it's your daughter and you always think that she will be with someone who looks like you. And that's the problem with 95% of people. There is a mismatch between what they think and who they are really. And because they don't work on the deep idea and the deep view of the world, it creates this kind of mismatch, you know, and cognitive bias and cognitive bug. As a startup is exactly the same thing, you know. Every entrepreneur that comes at the family always tells you something, I will never sell my company. Yeah, I'm here for the long haul and I blah, blah, blah. And every time someone wants to talk about selling their company, yeah, sure, we can discuss. But you know why it's horrible? Because your employee don't get it. Like, your employee cannot, like, let's say you are an employee in a company like that. And your CEO is saying, we are here for the long term, we want to build a very independent company, and we want to be leader on market. And next week you learn that the guy spent 2 hours to discuss about potential buying if the price is high enough. Like, that's called on-demand prostitution. It means that, yeah, you are not really fine with prostitution unless the price is high enough. That kills culture. By the way, like, it will be much more fun to come and see your team and say, look, guys, if someone offers me 200 million, I sell. And that's our goal. Our goal is to reach that value, and I will discuss with people until someone is ready to sell for that price. Like, people will feel much more comfortable hearing that. And by the way, if your employee have stocks, a lot of employees will be happy with that. Because they will be like, okay, cool, we have a goal, we have a common objective, and we will work to reach that. Much better than telling what you think you should say to look good as an entrepreneur, because everyone told you that you should be here for the long term, and you saw in the video of OUSSAMA that great entrepreneurs do that. And when an offer comes, you feel too weak, and you're like, yeah, sure, I will take the meeting. Because if you don't want to sell your company, you don't take meeting with people that want to buy it. Because if you are serious about the fact that you don't sell, you don't take meeting. You don't talk. You don't do due diligence. You don't unfocus people. And if you do that, people will believe you. Because on the opposite side, if you are true with yourself, and really if you don't want to sell, and people keep asking to buy, everyone inside the company will feel incredibly well. Because they will be like, wow, that guy is so courageous. And if you reach that point, you will get the respect of people working with you. So the culture being very, again, I'm not saying that selling a company is a bad thing. Like, by the way, we are an investor. When people sell, we make money. So I cannot be the one saying that selling is a bad thing. I'm just saying that you should be very clear about what is the level of success you want to achieve. By the way, culture is not about cute poster. You know, it doesn't mean that it's not nice to have poster, by the way. Look around you, we have a lot of posters. Some of them are written by us. Some of them are famous quotes. And they express what we want to tell people about our culture. For example, that one is my favorite one. It's quoted by Mr. Ammar. Partying is a very serious matter. Yeah. Like it's one of the, by the way, that one is one of the ones that most people talk about. Because they come here and it's like, are you really partying? Is it an office? Because again, people are easily shocked. So it doesn't mean that you are not, you should not express your culture. It just means that if you write things, but you don't really believe in it, or you don't act, or it's not expressed in details, or it's not expressed in people you hire, you will have trouble. Like, you know, every employee at the family makes a lot of party and play hard. Like, because it's part of our culture. We will never hire someone that doesn't fit in that. And it comes to that. It comes to the fact that you should hire only stars. But the problem is that so many people are wrong about what a star is. People think a star is something with a curriculum that is incredible or things like that, or high achievement. But a star is someone that gets your culture just by smelling the air. And just because he has the feeling that he found a place where he belongs from ever. And that doesn't happen very often, but when it happens, it creates an incredible relationship. So one of the ways to build a mission, and one of the things you should think about, it's a very famous TED talk. It's about the why. Simon Sinek did a TED talk about the what, how, why. He's doing it much better than I will ever do. And because it's TED, so it's fake. They have people that prepare. But I love that idea because it's really hard to think about why you are doing things. It's really easy to think about what. It's even easier to think about how. Because when you know what, most of the time the how is obvious. And if it's not obvious, you are really in big trouble. But the why, that's hard. Because if you want a why that is not fake, it's really, really hard. And by the way, I find that in this video is not very convincing about that because he's saying that best company in the world have a strong why. Yeah, but the fact is that it's not the company that have a strong why. is most of the time is a leader of the company that have a strong why. And that's why a company is an incredible thing, because you can have a leader that have a very precise why of why he's doing things, and that is not shared by average employee, and it works. Because average employees are here for the salary. So what makes exceptional company is the amount of people and percentage of people inside your company that will be here for the why. If you have a company where 100% of the employees are here for the why, you have one-of-a-kind company. You have a company that is so exceptional that you can achieve impossible thing. If you have a company where the only person that is here for the why is a CEO, you are in deep trouble, because you will fight all day long against everyone in the structure. Most normal company will find a balance between the people that come for the why and people come that because it's a salary. By the way, it's not something that happens on day of hiring. Sometimes people get the why after 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years of working, because being in a company with a very strong why makes them more comfortable about that. So what and how change? Like you can pivot, you can iterate, you can take any buzzword in startup and it works. So you can change your brand, your name, the way you do your business model, blah, 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 but you cannot change the why. If you have a fake why, you are dead. And before starting, because it's too hard. It's too hard to build a startup on the long term. It's too hard to do something so long if your why is not strong. And again, there is a very easy why. Making money. Again, it works. Like it's exactly like in art. You have level 1, you can copy artists. You have level 2, you can create something. And you have level 3, it's a masterpiece. Startups are the same thing. Level 1 is just about making money, it's fine. If you want to make money because that's something that worries you in your life, do it well. Like, I don't know why so many people do it the wrong way. You know, they don't do it very seriously, they don't invest enough effort, and they are not able to achieve what they want to achieve because they are not clear on that. So a very simple why can be, I want to make money, I have a clear plan to make money, and that's fine. But again, it's really hard on the long run. Making money is a sprint. You cannot be obsessed about making money for 20 years. If you are if you are an entrepreneur because you are here for a very long-term project, it starts by having a very strong why and have a very articulate why and be able to express that why to others. So, mechanism design, one of my favorite subjects in the world. So what is mechanism design? Mechanism design is one field of science of economics that think about game theory. So game theory is about how people act when there is rules and how they are incentivized by these rules to act a certain way. For example, a very easy mechanism design, you tax people with wealth and you tell them, if you invest in a certain class of asset, your tax is reduced on wealth. So you will give them a mechanism design to force them to invest in a certain kind of asset. That's like, we all know mechanism design because it's very used in tax. That's what makes tax so horrible. Because you have someone that has an interest to make you do something that maybe is not what you want to do. That's how you end up with business angel investing in startups that when they should better buy heart or go in holiday with this money than investing in startup, because they have a tax incentive to do it. So you can modelize every company as a mechanism design, because every rule you will implement will have an incitation and effect on the people that play the game. You can see every company as a game played by employee, and the rule you define will make employee play a certain way. And the way they play is always different from the way they think they play or they tell you they play. Because that's what is great about mechanism design, is that you can show real behavior. And if you have some time, you can read about the prisoner dilemma and all these very funny and famous case of mechanism design. But if you have less time, just think about every time you implement a process or a rule, what will be the impact on your company. One of the very famous rules that kill companies is budgeting. You know, when a company starts to be big, every department has budget. And what happens? Every year you have to reduce the budget. So what is the wrong process? The wrong process will be to say, if you spend your budget, we will increase the budget. If you did not spend your budget, we will decrease your budget. So what will happen? Everyone at the end of the year will try to spend budget that is not spent, not because they need it, but because they are worried that next year they need it. And so you see how a rule that look like, you know, very nice and rational, yeah, of course, if you have not used your budget, we cut your budget. If you use your budget, we increase your budget. A rule that like 75% of companies apply are actually very dangerous for a company. Because it's making the interest of the employee very different from the interest of the company. The interest of the company is that no employee spend money that they should not spend. True, no? Like it's better, like if you don't need the money to be spent, don't spend it. But there is so much incitation inside big company to make you spend money even if you don't need it, because maybe one day you will need it, that people end up doing stupid things. Mechanism design is the architecture of culture. Every rule you implement, you have to think about the worst case scenario, and you have to think about how that applies to the culture you are trying to build. And you need to do the formal work of that. Because if you don't do it, you will end up with this kind of side effect. And side effect in process come very, very fast. A very famous mechanism design that I love is called the captain dilemma. So do you know what happened on a boat when you have two captains? The boat crash. Why? Because the first captain thinks that the other captain will take the decision, and the other captain thinks that the decision is so obvious that he will let it to the other. And they end up crashing. Like that captain dilemma is so common in startup. You know, like I have this joke at the family, if you want that no one do something, but someone in CC. Like everybody that write to Alice and me never get any reply. It's a very simple rule. Because I see that Alice is in CC, I'm so like, oh, Alice will take care of that. And Alice see me in CC, oh yeah, Oussama will take care of that. And we end up like, one day I did an analysis on my mailbox. Everyone that sent me an email with CC has zero chance to get any answer from anyone. Because it's a captain dilemma. Because you don't really ask someone, so you don't take the risk of having a no. You want that mom and dad in the same time. And you end up having even the grandma that don't take care of you, you know, like you are so isolated. So there is a ton of rules like that. You have to be very careful before implementing any process. Believe natural expression, believe natural organization of the process, and don't implement rules too early. Process kill companies. Every process have a side effect. Employee will sometime, because of a mechanism design, will do something that they will never admit to have done. The good example is the budgeting thing. Because, you know, someone will expense money because he has a budget to do, even if he doesn't need it. And if you tell him you don't really need that, he will tell you, no, I need it. Because it will be too strong for him to recognize that he's lying. But his optimization brain took the decision. So when you put rules, people play, and sometimes they are not aware that they are playing. Sometimes they are not aware. Exactly the same, like, there is a video about that I love. It's called the Lucifer effect. It's one of the most depressing video about human nature. Is what percentage of people are able to kill someone if an institution allow them to kill it. So it's about, so how it works, it's at Stanford. You have someone on the chair, and he needs to tell the truth. And if he doesn't tell the truth, you have the right to send him electricity. And the level of electricity you send, you have a range of life metrics, yeah? You have a range of his life metrics. And if you do it too much, you come to a zone where it will tell you a warning, it can die if you continue. And more than 70% of students at Stanford, just with the authorization of a teacher, keep going. You just need that your teacher say to you, you can, no worry, you can keep going. And at the end, the person die. And people kill people. Just because one of the teachers say, yeah, no worry, you can keep going. And it's funny because every information on the dashboard is telling you you are doing something wrong. Like, look, his heart is beating too high, he's in life danger, and blah, blah. And by the way, more than 70% of people in this room will fail in that thing too, because that's the way humans are. When you have rules, the rules take over your mind. So, by the way, they are doing an experience right now to try that in multiple countries. And it's so funny because do you know the country where the percentage of people that kill in this experience is low? No. It's Italy. And it's so obvious. Like, I refuse to do anything that will harm him. Let's make love. No, it's it's so cultural. No, but it's so funny to see that sometimes in countries you have culture that are really adept at following rules, and some culture that are not. But the problem is that rules are things that make us so unhuman. 2 weeks ago, I was in Tokyo, 5 a.m. in the morning, getting back to the hotel, little bit drunk. Red light in the street, no cars, nowhere. Crossing with the red light, policeman arrested me. And the police guy told me it's red. And I was like, it's 5 a.m. and there is no car. And the guy was in the middle of the street talking to me and telling me it's red, you have to go on the other side and wait for it's green. And I was like, are you serious? And say, if you don't do that, I take you in jail. I was like, fine, I go back. It's an horrible experience because that guy doesn't have any humanity left. It's done. Because for him, rules are much more important than context. And it's so easy to end up like that. So that's why when I see companies that implement process, when they implement things, they don't see how much they are hurting themselves. Because 99% of process are natural, and you don't need process if people know what their goal is. So sometimes you need process. For example, security. Security process in computing are very hardcore process. Because you have to implement them, you have to respect them, and you don't have to think about them. Managing security is not contextual. It's just about managing security. But on the other hand, sometimes like a good example of that, I will not say the name of the company. We have a company yesterday in office hour that told me that they implemented the sale process, and the sales have to follow the process very strictly. And the process was so painful because, you know, for example, they are allowed to send back email to client between 8 to 9. From 9 to 10, they have to do the report. From 10 to 12, blah, blah, blah. And he came in office hour to tell me that every sales he hire are so bad because they don't do sales. And so he told me, and he showed me a map, you know, with it's so funny, like, you know, some people are like children, they love to do map and chart. And there was all these cases that you have to follow, and depending on the case, you have to go, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, yeah, I don't get why it doesn't work. So, of course, you try to be a little bit educative. So you don't tell him because you are an horrible dictator and that no one that really is still a human will be able to follow that process. So actually what happened is that you hired the worst cells on earth because if you're a cell, you feel it. You know, cell is about feeling. You have some people that call the morning, some people that call the afternoon, some people that do it over lunch. Everybody has his style, but at the end, the real thing is that they should sell. And they should be not evaluate about how they sell, but did they sell or not. So I told him to try an experiment. Is to hire 3 new cells, don't give them any instruction, and see how it goes. And the guy was like so stressed, like no instruction, but it will be worse. So yeah, that's what every communist country said. And a week later, of course, and that's a Hollywood story, and that's when you have extreme case. In fact, it's easy to have extreme impact because after the week, of course, the guy that was hired already did more sales than everyone else, and now he has kind of a revolution from everyone else that fight for their rights and they want to sell freely. And I understand why it's hard for him to understand that, because he thinks that being smart is about predicting the future. But it's exactly the same thing when Khrushchev that come in United States and ask Kennedy who is the manager of every shop in New York. And Kennedy's like, what do you mean the manager? Yeah, there is someone that is in charge of supply. Your shop are so well treated. You should have someone that is manager of that. And Kennedy's like, no, like every shop take care of their own supply. Oh, I see. You don't want to tell us who it is. I can understand that. You are protecting your asset. And it's crazy, like that's really the view of the world of a guy that was born in communism and coming to New York in 1967. Because, like, of course, he cannot imagine that another way is possible. That's a paradigm shift. So pay attention to that when you build your company. One example of very good mechanism design is the Facebook 1 mile rule. Facebook is paying you, I think, something like $2,000 a month more if you live less than 1 mile from the office. You see, one simple rule, so easy to understand. You live less than 1 mile, $2,000 a month. And what happened? Everybody come, and everybody live together, and everybody spend the time. And I agree, it's an horrible vision of humankind, but it's Facebook vision. Because what Facebook is about destroying the link and the distance between your pro-life and personal life. That's their mission. That's why they are doing that. Because they are doing that because everyone will live in the same neighbor. So you will be friends with them. When you will go in a restaurant, what will happen? You will see your colleague. And what will happen? You will talk about work. So you want to be in, apply the rule. You want to be out, 2,000 less a month. 2,000 is a lot of money for living somewhere, especially where rent are not so expensive, when the rent are so expensive. One of the mechanisms designed at the family is that we eat. It looks stupid, but our biggest budget here after salary is food. A true story, more than rent. We spend more money in food every month than in rent. True story. And why? Because eating together creates boundaries. Eating together creates links. Eating together creates the sentiment and the feeling of a family. Eating together creates a community. Eating well together creates a very nice, high-level community. It's a simple mechanism design because the quality of food shows the kind of care you give to people that create a kind of relationship. And by the way, we should change the slide and say that eats and drink together. Because, of course, a huge part of the food budget is in wine. Because that's what is work. And another company that shared that is Menu Next Door, they told me, oh yeah, we did an event, we challenged you world record of number of bottled drink by people. And yeah, because that's mechanism design, that's culture, that's a very simple implementation of a goal. Their business is about conviviality. They want to implement a very convivial framework. So, just to finish, a good culture is coherent, visible, shared. So, don't build things in your culture because they look good. Build things in your culture because you believe in them. Don't be very open about your culture because your culture should be visible. And so if people feel uncomfortable with this culture, it's fine. And shared, because if not everyone inside your company shares the culture, you are in big trouble. Thank you very much.
You said at some point that when we are recruiting, we need to be really strong as leaders and not let people do whatever they want in whatever way they want. But here you're more moderate about this, saying that the why should be really strict and really part of who you are, but the how should be more loose, or?
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I'm sorry if I gave you the feeling. I know why you are saying that, and it's because I did not express myself well enough. So it's not a question of letting people whatever they want to do. When I was saying that, it was more to say that defining the leadership and the goal of the company is the role of the CEO. So if you take the why, what, how, let's say that why is the job of the CEO, what is the job of the executive team, and how is for whoever wins. So the how is less important than the what and the why, because if you are here to tell, if you need to tell people how to do things in every step, and you need to be behind the back, it's not employee, and that's not strong leadership, because that will be your horrible vision of humankind, and it's the story I was telling about Japanese that prefers the rule than the context. But in the same time, a why cannot be discussed. Because if your why is not strong enough that people are not comfortable with it, and they can discuss the why, you will finish in a struggle of employee that will fight each other all day long. And so that's where, and the what is in the middle. Because, you know, it's a problem that we have with young employees, by the way. The problem with young employees is that they come inside a startup and they always have wrong reason to come in the startup. The three main wrong reason is that they come because it's small, they come because they think that their idea will be implemented, and they come because it's cool. That's the wrong reason to go in a startup. And what happens is that sometimes you have someone that come as an employee 20 or employee 15, and he has all these ideas about how things should be done, and it's everything that failed for the last 18 months. And because they are counterintuitive, they take wrongly that they are not let express themselves, and they don't feel right, or I don't know what, and they feel micromanaged and blah, blah. But the reality is that every employee at start should be micromanaged until the point he proved his value. And by the way, that fight is very good, because when they prove their value, they give something better than what they are doing. One of our ex-employees talked with one of our startups in an interview, and the question was, what did you learn at the family? And he said, I learned to work harder. Because everything you do, no one never grateful you for that. It's only when you do exceptional things that they say thanks. And it's true, because we believe that making your job right is a minimal. Making your job exceptional, it's what we are looking for. So it shows you like where can you, and by the way, you will not do your job exceptionally if you did not learn to do your job well and good before. So you have also to understand that it's a path and it's a process, and sometimes people are so wrong about how they see their life. You know, most of the people that are unhappy in their life is because they have a mismatch between their expectation and what they are doing. And you know, their expectation is here, and their life is here. And And what happens is that they are always mismatching their expectation. Every happy people are people that have a progressive expectation. They are not expecting the first week the same thing than the first year, than the first 10 years. If you are treated as an employee the same way after a week, after a month, after a year, and after 10 years, you are in deep trouble. You are working for someone that is not fair. But what's wrong is when you come in some place and in a week you want the same respect and treatment than someone that is doing that from 5 years. That doesn't mean that on the other hand, it doesn't mean that as a 3-month employee, you cannot fight for something that is counterintuitive if you are not bringing value. And sure, it's not about saying that experience matter over ideas. It's just that experience matter as much as ideas, and that fight is continuous, meaning that in a fight you can lose. And also, that's another point, is that people should be much more comfortable about losing internally. Like, so many people take that personally, and that's when things start to get wrong. Because they confuse their work and their self, and never get defined by your work, because we screw so much in work, you know? If you look your lifetime, as a children, we screw very little. As a student, we can start to screw a little bit. But as worker, the amount of screwing we have in our life of work is so high. So if you start to define yourself by your work, you are dead. Because you will have a very low esteem of yourself. And it comes down to what I was trying to say, is that leadership is about having so strong direction that no one discusses. That doesn't say that people will not do the how, wherever they want, and however they feel. Just to give you an image, it's the difference between a cook and a chef. You know, every chef is a cook, but not every cook is a chef. And no one ever starts as a chef. No one. Like, I love that. You know the word of cooking? I love that word so much because you cannot fake work. Like, if you go in a kitchen, if you have one day the luck to go in an exceptional kitchen and see exceptional chef working, you will feel the work ethic. Just crossing the door and seeing how people... And every chef in the world started exactly at the same place. Because you cannot study to be a chef. There is not a school that makes chef. There is school that make cook, not chef. And some people become chef in 2 years. Some people take 10 years. Some people take 20 years. But at the end, every chef has been a cook. That's what is wrong with the startup world. Is that you don't see that every entrepreneurs, incredible entrepreneurs, have been a cook first. And I think people, like, if you look about successful entrepreneurs, what really defines them is that so much of them worked so hard on so much little project. And they did it like it was their life depending on that, from very little. And so they have this training, and this is why they have this cook training. This is why one day they become chef.
You said we have to convey the culture to our employees, but when you're hiring someone, how do you do that very concretely? Like, you spend some time with him explaining the history of the family, you give documents, or how do you first make him or her understand and then test that he's aligned with this?
We are so bad at that. We fire a lot. That's the way we do it. Like, no, the truth is that first, we are bad at interview because as French people, there is things that you are not able to learn, and one of it is interview. Like, interview in France are so painful. Like, I never saw anyone from France that know how to do an interview well, and we are in that case. Like, it's so counterintuitive and so counter-French. So we adopted that policy to say that anyway, you need between 1 month to 3 months to see if you fit, and if you don't fit, we stay friends. And by the way, we are in a situation where most of the people that did not fit, and we did not have the feeling that fit, we are not even sure that we are right or not. And you have to be very comfortable about that. The way you ask the question is a way that doesn't exist because it's a way that is looking for 100% certainty. But 100% certainty doesn't work. You should be, like, I prefer to avoid someone outside our culture than, I prefer to avoid someone in our culture than taking the risk to hire someone that is not. So I know that there is people we said no to that are actually will have been good or inside it or blah, blah, blah. So that's obvious. And that kind of mistake, you should be fine with it. Yeah, we know we have this culture of performance, of selection, and avoiding mistake and blah, blah, blah. But that's not reality. The reality is that you have to live with the idea that most of the time you will screw it up. And that's fine.
So you try, you test, and you decide.
Yeah.
I had a question about this common preconception in the big companies that no one is irreplaceable.
Yeah.
And if we think to what you said before about the why, about the culture, the mission, the personality of the founders are very important, don't you think?
Yeah, totally.
And so this thing of nobody is irreplaceable, is it a crap for startups or is it more and more true, but it comes from the big companies and so...
Very good question. I think that's one of the main differences between big corporation and startup. Startups are much more intuitio personae than any big companies. And because big companies reach a point where they have inertia of the revenue. And that inertia creates a lot of positive outcome. One of them is that whoever is here is able to manage the company. Warren Buffett has a very good joke about that. He said that only her ham and cheese can run a company I invest in, because they are so efficient that even if you put a ham and cheese as a CEO, and ham and cheese sandwich, it will work. Because people will look at the sandwich and they will say, oh, he said yes, and they will take decision. So I think that doesn't work in a startup. In a startup, you have a very intimate link between the entrepreneur and the project. And again, it's a question of cook and chef. You need the chef, and the chef, he has something very special about what he's cooking today. And until a point where whoever he is, he will reach a brand status, and that brand status create other outcomes. So you have to understand that startups are very specific thing in the history of a company. Exactly the same way than being a kid is different than being an adult. You have, you know, when you're a kid, you can put your legs here, and anyone can do that. And when you're an adult, only if you do a lot of yoga, you can achieve that. So same thing with startup and big companies. You have things that are easier when you are a startup. You have things that are much, much, much more hard.
I had a question about the part that you said that DNA, the culture of the company is its DNA.
Yeah.
But I give you an example, like when you are a young entrepreneur, when you are just graduated, you have not done a company yet, and you get around with your friends who are also like you, that have not any experience. So they have not trained that cooking part to be a chef. So how to build that culture and how to... Okay, I have two questions. First, how to do that? How to do that this exercise? And is it easier for a startup to change that if it's even it's a DNA?
So, starting to answer your second question because it's easier than the first one, no, it's not easy to change. Like most of the cultural decisions you take at beginning, you take them forever, and you can change them when you change your company and when you do something new because you failed. This is why it's so important to fail. No, but really, because if things are going wrong, failing is the best way to do from zero something and to start from zero and to have the energy to do something new. So that's why failing is a very important process. And you don't have, it's really hard to mutate. It happens, you know, some big companies do cultural shift. It's a pain, it takes years. Some of them achieve it, some of them don't. But it's not a question for startup. In a startup, by the way, it's much harder to change a culture in a startup than in a big company, because at least a big company have time. A startup doesn't have the money, resource, time to change. So to come back to your first question, you are pointing one of the reasons why most entrepreneurs fail is because they become entrepreneur to become entrepreneur, but not because they have a mission or something to do. Because the culture most of the time come down from the fact that the entrepreneur has a mission and whatever age he is. You know, you can have culture even when you are 19 years old or 18 years old, because if your mission is strong, you will not, your mind will not be 18 years old. What happened with most of young graduates that wants to become entrepreneur is that their way of thinking about that will be, instead of taking a job, I will build a company. And that's where trouble starts, because they will be in a situation where building a company is much more important than doing anything else. And the reason of doing it will be to build a company and not because they have a project. So culture is born from the project, not the company. This is why one of the best advice for young people is, instead of doing company, do project. You know, the fact that being an entrepreneur become fashionable is one of the worst things that happen in entrepreneurship, because too many people become entrepreneur not because they have a project, but because they want a project at any cost, because they want to be considered as an entrepreneur. So one of the ways to train yourself and to exercise is, instead of building a company, build a project. And be a project as long as possible. Be in that state where people don't take it seriously until the point is strong enough so it can become a company and you have the feeling you have no other choice than creating a company. That will be, I think, the best path. Now, again, if you are a young graduate and you see entrepreneurship as a career thing, that can be fine. But in that case, your first company should be like, look, if you are a graduate from a top school and you decide to go on a career, you will be strategical about doing your internship at Goldman Sachs, so you can become associate at JP Morgan's, so you can become partner at whatever. And people have this kind of thinking very naturally. And it's great, because that's how you build a curriculum, that's how you build a career. I mean, if you want to be a top corporate player after doing a top Ivy League school or whatever, you have to be rational about that. You have to make it well. But when they become entrepreneur, because they look like a little bit like being an artist, they are lost and they are confused. So they don't have mission, they don't have why, they don't have project, and they want to open a company. But people in this situation should be driven by only one thing, money. Because it solves everything. So if you want to be an entrepreneur as a career thing, as something like building curriculum, it's very easy. Step one, you should do between 2 to 5 million to get credibility. Step two, you should try to fundraise a lot of money to do something big. And step three, you should be hired to manage something big that someone else created. Like I just gave you the career of Eric Schmidt. I think Eric Schmidt, as an entrepreneur, doesn't have any lesson to receive from anyone. That guy built a career that people like me will only dream about. He ended up as a CEO of Google. But he'd have been very rational about the fact, about how he built that. First, he built a company where he sold it for 5 million after 3 years. Then he fundraised a lot of money at Sun Microsystem. And then Google approached him to become CEO because of his previous experience. So entrepreneurs need professionals. You just need to understand who you are. Exactly the difference between being a chef and a restaurant owner. If you want to be a restaurant owner, the chef is a tool. If you're a chef, the restaurant is a tool. You see, it's the other way around. So you have to be very committed about who you are and how you see your life. Are you a restaurant owner or are you a chef? And being chef is not something you can fake. And by the way, most of our restaurant owners are much happier than chefs. Most of the chefs are crazy. I was with one of my best friends that is a chef. I will not say his name publicly last week. And he's a 3-star in Paris. He's one of the world well-known chef. And we was talking together in the kitchen. And he asked me to try something new that one of the cook prepared. And the cook prepared something that was not at his taste. And he became so mad that he took the plate and put it on the face of the cook in the kitchen in front of everyone. And he asked him to clean up with everything on him. And everyone in the kitchen was like that. And I was with my girlfriend, and before getting in the kitchen, I told her, look, if anything wrong happened, don't look surprised, or don't say anything, or don't react, because you don't do that in the kitchen. And she was like, what do you think that will happen? And 5 minutes later, that happened. And she was like... And after she was like, that guy is horrible, he's inhuman, he should never treat someone like that. She was so mad. And I told her, did you ever taste something good like that? That's your fucking life. Because what happened with this kind of people? These kind of people are not restaurant owner. There are people that when someone misses something, it's their heart that is attacked. Is all their soul that is under high pressure, and everything they do in their life is to get perfection. And if someone in the kitchen don't get that, his life is destroyed. And that's why most of the chefs, by the way, are a lot of personal trouble. They are really hard to deal with, and as a human being, they are not easy. But that's the price of art, and it's always have been the price of art. Like it's really hard to be a genius and not be a jerk. Because being a jerk, it's not because, by the way, a lot of people think that being a jerk is a feature of being a genius. No, it's just that it's much easier. It's much easier to be a jerk than being a human being respectful. Because it's so hard to explain to someone everything that happened internally to you.
You mentioned some issues with the 4-year-old gap. How do you work around this age issue?
You don't. No, really, you don't. Again, I will regret to have said a number. Because again, what is important is not the number, but more what the number represents in average. So, there is people, for example, Miguel de Fontenay in our team is, actually I don't even know how old he is, but he is old. That guy is a teenager, like everyone in our team. You want a characteristic of everyone working at partner level here? There are kids. Alice is a kid, Colin is a kid, I'm a kid. We all act very, very, in a lot of ways, like kids act. We are very emotional, we want things instantly, we don't accept no as an answer. We think that what we think is the best thing to think. Our mom loves us. We think that we are the most beautiful on earth and that we are the center of the universe. So, 56 years old, 40 years old, 27 years old like Balthazar, all of us share exactly that deep inside our personality. And it's invisible because it's not expressed the same way. Because, of course, Miguel in his generation, that expressed very differently than me in my generation. So again, it's not a problem of number. It's more the fact that having someone 56 years old acting like that is really exceptional and uncommon. So if you are uncommon, the age will not be an issue because it will be invisible. You will not think that you are old. But what happened is that most of the time, being old have very concrete things. One of them is, for example, one founder has children, one founder doesn't have children. And trouble start. It's not the fact. Here, half of the people doesn't have children, the other half have children, and we never had any problem because we always act if their children was our children. Alice and I, we do babysitting for Nicolas. True story. Like at the beginning of the family, when we was out of money and Nicolas doesn't have, sometimes we kept the kid. Because that's, for me, having kids, it's my kid or the other kid, I don't care. It's kid, I love kids. So again, you see, it's a cultural thing. And I understand that some people don't like kids. especially when they are young. And you can have been like, Nicola, we don't like you, kid. It's so painful. We want to do a meeting at 11 p.m. and you cannot because you have fucking kids. That's a very concrete thing that creates problem. So it's not that you work around the age problem. It's that sometimes the age trouble is something real, sometimes it's not. And by the way, the 4 years old was more, it was a more way to think about it. Because 4 years old is a new generation. Think about that. Before, we learned in school that a generation was 20 years. I lived the fact that we went from a 20 years generation to a 10 years generation in 2000. Because remember, from 1980 to 2000, that was a generation. And from 2000 to 2010, there was another generation. And from 2010 to 2016, we had already 2 generations. Because generations are shorting. When I was in high school, I was understanding people that was in first year of high school. Now, when you see the difference of culture between the first year in high school and the last year in high school, it's crazy. They cannot communicate with each other. They don't use the same app. They don't have the same entertainment. They don't watch the same TV show when they watch TV, by the way. So you see, that creates a fragmentation of society where age is more and more a decision of where you are in that society. Did you keep on following what's happening, or do you decide very consciously to don't? But you cannot pretend that is not a force that works against cohesion in society. Because it works so much. And by the way, I don't want to be a human resource manager in a big company. Because I think it's starting to be a fucking nightmare. Because, they do seminar about Generation Y when Generation Y is already dead. And I don't imagine, it's people that try to create process to hire people for the next 20 years. And when you tell them that people change every 2 years, you imagine what? I will redo everything every 2 years. It's impossible.
What about when you have some revenue opportunity, and if you take this opportunity, it may have some consequences on your mission or on your culture?
Oh, very good question. Don't take the money.
Okay.
Don't take the money.
Thank
and
you.
my favorite story about that is to one of the best entrepreneurs in France, Fanny Péchioda from My Little Paris. If there is one entrepreneur in France that is really at level of an exceptional one, is the woman that built My Little Paris. She made a business through a newsletter. Just saying that, we should celebrate her. But I will tell you a personal story of the first time I heard about My Little Paris, because you will understand that I'm not an early user of My Little Paris. I was not the target. Even if I like to read it now, but at the beginning I was not the target. And one day I was in a meeting with the head of BETC, the advertise agency, and the guy was so mad. Like the guy gets in the office and he was like, Oussama, there is this entrepreneur. Do you know Fanny Péchioda? I was like, no, never heard of her. You know what she did to us? We gave her a first budget, a huge advertised campaign, something that will change her life. And she told us that she refused the money and will send the money back because she wants to redraw the campaign because she finds our graphism ugly to put in our newsletter. Who the fuck she thinks she is? And I was like, in my head, I was hating that guy. In my head, I was like, I want to meet that girl. I was like, how much is the budget? It's thousands of euros. Like for a fucking company, it will be a lot of money. I was like, really? And she sends you back the money? Yeah, she sends the wire. Can you believe that? She will never work again. I met Fanny 2 years ago. I was like, Fanny, you have to tell me what happened. Because I was like, I spent 5 years excited about that story. And after the night after that, I went on My Little Paris, I subscribed, and I was sure that that company will be one of the best companies in France, and I was not wrong. And so I told her like that I know the guy and blah, blah. And she told me that she felt so bad to send just an advertise to a user, that the money was a lot for her because it was 6 months of salary. They never did a revenue before. And refusing that, the guy made her such a bad reputation that it took her 6 months to get another client. But what happened 6 months later when she got another client? She got a client that was so eager to work with her because she had refused everyone, that the client was perfect. And the client accepted to follow every rules of My Little Paris. She did with a 100,000 euro campaign more money than they did with every other budget in this Dior or Clarins, or to be honest, I don't remember the word. And she created a reputation forever as someone that never hurt a user for advertise, even if advertise it's a business model. So you see, when your mission is strong, and when you're a little bit, you can survive this kind of thing. Because you will go on the hard path, but at the end, it will work out. And you know, that story has been an inspiration for me at the family, because every first corporate client we had here went bad, and we gave back the money. Same style. Because that I was inspired by what she did, and especially because I come from the other side of the shadow. Because at the same time, I was with this BATC guy to take money from him, and I told him, yeah, I understand you, she's horrible, blah, blah, blah. Fanny, I love you. and so it took me time to understand that she was right. You know, and even if I was so impressed, you know what, the truth is that night, I was like, that girl is so crazy that she will bankrupt, but she will do something extraordinary after. And when I saw that she survived and she succeeded, I was like, okay, that's the lesson taken. Because that's what incredible people do. They never compromise. And you should not compromise. Why every time we are looking for an entrepreneur that is a woman, in France, we always take women that never did anything in their life? Yeah, I will not give names. But I don't get it. And you know, my theory is because we want to keep women in a way that we don't take them seriously as an entrepreneur. So we take the worst of them and we say like, look, that's your example, and don't do better, because if you do better, that will be threatening. And when men are in front of Fanny, they always feel bad because they are like, oh my God, she's so violent. I heard that feedback so many times. You don't imagine like what I heard about Alice when we created the family. Like if I'm pissed off about things, like people was telling me, yeah, like why you put a woman CEO? Or like, I put a woman CEO? Like that's the way you see it? Like you don't think that I put the best of us CEO, like a woman? And I'm talking about people that pretend to be our friends. Like I'm not talking about the guy that ate us and said horrible things. I'm talking about people that are close to us and they are like, oh, you know, a woman CEO, it's more hard, blah, blah, blah. Like it's horrible. And I think, like, I know there is a lot of girls in this class. If I can give you one advice, is that you should learn to say fuck off to all these people. Because I don't get all this advice that say, oh, you can be a woman and blah, 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 be an entrepreneur or blah, blah, blah. All of that is bullshit. Like being an entrepreneur is being an entrepreneur. Girl or woman, it's hard, it hurts. And being a girl is not different than being a man. It's just a fight. And in a fight, you lose or you win. There is nothing in the middle. Question? Please.
About this subject, what about when it comes to investors? How do they react with a woman? How is it today?
Bad, of course. Yeah. But by definition, they see everything that change their framework or pattern or mindset as something that is bad. Like, be realistic about that. Like, is it more complicated to fundraise as a woman? Yes. Dot. So deal with it, girls. Like, like, what can I tell you? I can tell you it's a bad thing, or it's sad, or blah blah. Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is,
but it's like that. And you know what? Again, there is no woman with traction that struggle to fundraise, because being a woman stopped to be an issue when there is no debate. So when I was 16 years old, I met a guy that worked with Dr. King about the black right in US. And he was a friend of my brother, and he wrote a book. And that's, by the way, the first guy that ever told me about Barack Obama. And I read his book and blah, blah. But he told me something that really, really made me think a lot about my life. He said, in life, no one starts on the same position. Because some people start the race way behind. Some people start the race way in front. But the trouble, more you start from the behind, more when you will join the front, you will be trained. So at the end, it's not a bad thing to start from the behind. It's just the reality. And the reality, you have two ways to deal with it. You can be mad at reality, or you can accept reality and fight against reality. And by the way, accepting is about fighting. Accepting is not about saying, oh, it's great. I'm not saying that accepting is saying great. Accepting is saying, okay, there is a fucking problem and I will solve it. And what he told me, he said, where Dr. King have been extraordinary is that he never complained about all the struggle he got in his life, and he made everyone in the community feel that what he was doing was easy. Because that's what real stars do. They don't talk about their struggle. They pretend it's easy because they want to give up. They want to make it well. They want to make it right. And so there is thousands of people in entrepreneurship that don't start on the same line. And by the way, they are the same people than other line. Like, do you know why I'm an entrepreneur? My name is OUSSAMA. What do you think, what line do you think I started on? Like on September 12, 2001, I know that my life was done. It's easy. It's easy to understand that even if I was top in a class, even if I was going to Grande École, I will never have the career or become French president. So you can, yeah, because that was my kid dream. So two choice. Choice one, you can think that is an horrible way of life and it's unfair and blah, blah, blah. Or you can say, that's so cool, I will do something else and I will do things that other people will never do. Look, in literature, we have this lesson. Do you know why every hero in every children's book lose their parents? Because how can you be an hero if your parents say to you, you should come back before 6? It will kill the story. Like even Fantomette have a weird uncle. So having struggle in life is a great opportunity if you take it. And of course, I'm not like, there is some people that say, oh, you earn it, you deserve it, blah, blah. No, at the end, there is a lot of luck, blah, blah, blah things. But you have to work hard. And you will always have people that will not consider you. But it's fine. Because you build your own thing and you just deal with it. So all the problem, all the difference, all the thing, society are conservative by definition. By mechanism design a group of people together, they are scared of something new, and you have to live by yourself and prove yourself before needing others. And like in Europe, we have this problem in terms of mindset, is that we are always waiting that someone give us a success. Let's do it about French situation 2 minutes. You know, we have a very trendy minister these days, Emmanuel Macron. Because in France, when you have some people that are, you know, outsiders, they come from Normal Sup, they did l'ENA, they worked for Paul Ricoeur, and they are inspecteurs des finances. That's our outsiders. But he has a beer. He says smart things, so new in politics. Everybody's disrupt. Like, but you're saying things because you believe them. Like, yeah, you should try. It works. But what is so funny? Read every article about it. Because, to be honest, I'm in love. I have to say it publicly. That guy is my sweetheart. I can't become gay for a man like that. So we can go with it. If you read every article about him, they will always tell you about his mentors. Always. Like, Jacques Attali helped him to get a job, and blah, blah, blah helped him to get that. And he had the protection of CEO of blah, blah, blah. Because that's the way France is. You need mentors that gave you your success. But that's why entrepreneurship is so beautiful, because you can build your own success, you can take your own success, and you can steal your success. And so even if you start from far behind, when you run so well that when you will come in the front line, you will be strong. And you can fight for your success and you kill everyone on the way and it works. So again, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's fine. I'm not saying it's acceptable. I'm saying that's the way it is. And people should deal with it.
Maybe a last question about those communities or incubators dedicated to women, because we are a special human race, apparently. Do you think it's a protection or it's something that could be positive for us?
There is incubators dedicated to women?
Yeah, Paris Pionnière.
Never heard of. Okay.
Or Girls in Web or that kind of communities. Do you think this could be interesting? Because entrepreneurship world is still a little bit macho, or you think we should not play that game?
Entrepreneurs have a problem with women, and I don't know how that problem will be solved. And by the way, women have a problem with entrepreneurship, and I don't know how to solve that problem. So just to give you my perspective about that, I'm so tired of women in entrepreneurship. Like, you don't imagine how much. Like, we, as a family, we did so much things. We gave koudetat for free for women. We did a free nursery at the family. We organized sisterhood. And we have a 5% rate of CEO women at the family. And most of them don't feel that being an entrepreneur is for them, and they stop and things. So, like, it's a two-way around. Entrepreneurs have a problem with women, and women have a problem with entrepreneurs. If the solution is to gather together and do things on their own and build an incubator for women only, it will be great, but the problem is, who are the role models? So if you look about who are the role models of women entrepreneurship in France, you have a big trouble. So I don't know who are managing this ecosystem, but if this ecosystem are managed by good women, it can produce incredible effect. Building dedicated community that reject the others is one of the ways of creating equality, whatever we think about that. That's what happened in Chicago in the 50s. That's what happened in Seattle in the 60s. That's what happened in New Orleans in the 80s. Like, and by the way, Black Panther movement, for example, is a good example of something that went too far because of violence. But the idea was kind of right, and they understand something is that they have to fight for their own people. They did it the wrong way and the most horrible way, but at least they tried to did it. So I think the idea of building a female entrepreneurship incubator is great. And it's a place I would love to go to teach. But it will be more fun. But the problem again will be, who are the role model and how it's executed. If it's executed to go in the caricature and say that women are more comfortable building service company than scalable company, if it's to come and having a Véronique Morali that explained that being an entrepreneur is really hard to balance with like, why women, like, for example, why on earth women go on stage and works about family work-life balance? Why? Like, no men do that. Did you ever see a man that go and say, like, yeah, I manage my balance with my kids so well, and I find an equilibrium. And by the way, most of them are doing it. Like, you know, it's not because you're an entrepreneur that you're a bad father. Like, there is good father out there. But they don't feel obliged to talk about it. And if all these women feel obliged to talk about it, it's because they are stuck in a generation where whatever they think about themselves, they don't feel comfortable about being successful. So they make you pay the price of that. Because they tell you, look, you are still a woman, we are different. So again, it's women and men are different, of course. Like, I'm different from that guy. Like, if you take any category of people, you will always find difference and common sense. So that's not the subject. The subject of equality is that there is so much difference between two dudes, that there is so much difference between a dude and a guy, that we should all consider them equal as a right, because that's the only way to treat difference. And because we are different, we need to be equal, by the way. It's not because we are equal that we need to be equal. So again, instead of an incubator, I will dream of a meetup of girls self-generated with real entrepreneurs, even if it's so small. For example, girls in tech. What is the problem with girls in tech? Sorry, Roxanne and all of that, I love them, but there is a huge problem. There is 700 people, and each time you go to one of this event, you understand that everyone in the room is not committed to be an entrepreneur. So they have the feeling that they open, they have the feeling that they make it accessible, they have the feeling that they will convince people. But the only thing they do is that they go on stage and explain that they are employee, talking to employee, and fantasizing on entrepreneurship. Because Roxanne is an employee, Audrey is an employee, and every girls at Girls in Tech is an employee. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that that will never create a real entrepreneurship. And if you took for example, one of our best CEO is a woman, is the CEO of Clustery. And so last time I talked with her about this woman things, blah, blah, blah. And she started to yell at me. She said, oh, you're talking to me about that because I'm a woman and you consider me differently. I was like, fuck off, you are a woman. Of course, if I talk about the gender subject, I will talk with you because you are the only successful woman that we have. So sorry to put you in zoo. And we had this argument. And I understand, by the way, I understand what she meant. She meant that he's so tired that everyone talk about that instead of talking about the fact that she has half of the CAC 40 as a client. And I told her that I was sorry and I feel responsible like every others about that. So yeah, it can work. It should be executed with radicality. If you want to do a female incubator, call it Amazon. Don't allow men. Do it peer-to-peer and make it strong. And you know what? One of the women I respect the most for that is Sonia Riquel, because she tell that she only hire women at high-level job. And when you ask her why, is it more efficient? She said, no, it's because they do the same. And I love that crazy old dude. Like she's so crazy, and I think she worked much more for female rights than anyone that tried to create communication gap or I don't know what. Yeah, please, my friend.
What's your advice concerning the? Actually have a big issue because most of my partners want to know what is my business model. But I don't have any business model. We have only one mission, is to make eating out stressful for people living in big cities. But every restaurant cares only about our business model, how we are going to make money. So how do you manage this kind of relationship?
Find a business model and a way to make money.
Okay.
That's easy. Like, you don't need to be right. I know your trouble. Your trouble is that when they ask you your business model, you want to give the absolute answer of truth. You want to say, I don't want to reply to this question until the moment I'm 1000% that my answer will be the right answer. And I'm telling you, you are a coward. If someone asks you a business model and you need that to sell, just invent one. And one day you will change because you will find the real one. Like we said, we are an incubator. Like if we said that, anyone can say anything. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Que la famille.